What if the wealthiest church on earth isn't in Rome, isn't in the gilded cathedrals of Europe, but in a high desert valley once called worthless? 17 million followers, an estimated $300 billion in assets, a quiet empire that rivals global corporations. How did a 19th century frontier sect driven west by mobs and gunfire become the richest faith per capita in the modern world? This is the story of the Latter-day Saints, and the fortune that almost no one sees coming. Welcome to the Chronist, where hidden history, scripture, and power converge. Today we uncover how a persecuted band of believers built a financial machine so vast that economists and Wall Street analysts alike are still trying to measure it. Picture the United States in the early 1830s, a young nation alive with tent revival preaching, new denominations springing up like wildfire, and an uneasy truce between faith and frontier law. Into this restless landscape steps Joseph Smith, a farm boy from upstate New York, who claims he has seen visions of God and angels and uncovered golden plates bearing a new scripture, the Book of Mormon. To many Americans steeped in traditional Protestant belief, his message is explosive, a new revelation that dares to stand beside the Bible itself. At first, the movement is small: farm families, tradesmen, seekers of a purer church. But the boldness of Smith's claims and the rapid growth of his followers ignite suspicion and fury. Neighbors call them imposters, sorcerers, even traitors. Mob violence erupts. Printing presses that publish their teachings are smashed. Believers are driven from New York to Ohio, their homes torched, their meeting houses defaced. They regroup in Missouri, only to face harsher hostility. Local militias raid Mormon settlements. The governor issues an infamous extermination order, declaring that Mormons must be driven from the state or exterminated. Families flee again. Women carrying infants through winter mud, men guarding wagons under gunfire. In Illinois, they build a city called Nauvoo, a brief refuge of elegant brick homes and busy river docks. But here, too, tension boils. Smith is arrested on charges of treason. An armed mob storms the jail in Carthage and kills him, shattering the movement's young leadership. Leaderless but unbroken, the Saints face a choice: scatter and dissolve, or rally behind a single guiding hand. Under Brigham Young, they choose unity over despair. What follows is an exodus unlike any in American history. Thousands of believers trekking across 1,000 miles of prairie toward an unclaimed, desolate basin beyond the Rocky Mountains, a place so barren the U.S. government calls it worthless. There, in the Salt Lake Valley, survival is not guaranteed. The soil is alkaline. Water is scarce. Winter bites early and stays late. So they learn a hard, binding truth. To live, they must be one. Every crop is counted. Every harvest is apportioned. Land is mapped and assigned with care. Labor is scheduled, shared, and recorded. Money is not merely currency. It is a covenant, a sacred trust between believer and community, between the people and their God. Out of persecution is born a discipline so exact that it will shape every financial decision the church makes for the next 2 centuries. By the time the saints are firmly planted in the Salt Lake Valley, they know that survival isn't just about crops and canals. It's about covenant economics. From the pulpit, leaders begin to formalize a command already whispered on the plains: a full 10% of every increase belongs to the Lord. Not a polite Sunday suggestion, a sacred duty written into sermons, family budgets, and personal conscience. For a Mormon household in the 19th century, this means every calf born, every bushel harvested, every coin earned is tallied and tithed. Wheat, eggs, hand-spun cloth. If money is scarce, goods flow instead, all carefully recorded in ledgers that double as spiritual testimony. Children grow up watching parents place envelopes on the bishop's desk, absorbing an unspoken equation: to give is to obey God. Tithing isn't charity. It's covenant, discipline, proof of faith. And unlike the looser, congregational traditions of many Protestants, the saints refused to let local wards hoard or drift. Every dollar, every sack of grain, travels upward through a single pipeline to church headquarters. From there, leaders redistribute funds back to congregations, not as a favor, but as a carefully measured lifeline. It's as if the church builds an irrigation network across a desert of uncertainty. Resources collected in one reservoir, then released wherever the crops or the people need water most. One church, one ledger, no splinter groups siphoning resources, no renegade treasury starving the mission. This system does more than pay for chapels and meeting houses. It forges financial obedience into the DNA of the faith. Every saint knows their tithe, links them, not only to God, but to a global body that moves, prays, and spends as one. Over generations, that steady river of 10% becomes something more powerful than any frontier bank account. It is infrastructure, a sacred economy designed to outlast drought, famine, and even the shifting tides of American capitalism. By the mid-20th century, the church faces a new kind of challenge. It is no longer a scrappy frontier faith. It is a worldwide movement, and with growth comes complexity and risk. Leaders in Salt Lake City launch a quiet but sweeping project they call correlation. Its goal: to bring every lesson, every meeting, every stream of money into perfect alignment. Committees comb through decades of teaching manuals, erasing contradictions, tightening doctrine, ensuring that a Sunday class in Tokyo sounds exactly like a Sunday class in Toronto. Worship schedules, youth programs, music selections, all standardized, so a child baptized in Nairobi learns the same order of service as a child in Nebraska. But correlation is more than curriculum. It is financial choreography. Budgets are set centrally. Local wards submit detailed reports. Funds are gathered into a single reservoir and released with mathematical precision. Doctrine and dollars now march in lockstep. No rogue congregations. No regional experiments with money or message. Just one global church, one meticulously tuned machine. Meanwhile, an army of missionaries fans across continents. Young men in pressed white shirts and black name tags walk dusty roads in Lagos, pedal through the humid streets of Manila, knock on apartment doors in Sao Paulo, and quietly set foot in hundreds of other cities and villages. Every conversation, every conversion, adds not just a believer, but a faithful tither to the ever-growing pipeline that flows back to headquarters. By the late 20th century, the Latter-day Saints have become a seamless global network, a spiritual multinational with the efficiency of a Fortune 500 company and the discipline of a single congregation. What began as a survival strategy in the desert has evolved into a worldwide infrastructure of faith, finance, and flawless coordination. Fast forward into the 20th century. The pioneer wagons are long gone, but the discipline they forged has quietly matured into something staggering. On a quiet street in Salt Lake City stands a plain, glass and steel office building. No spires, no stained glass, just a simple sign that says Ensign Peak Advisors. To a passerby, it could be an insurance agency or a mid-tier tech firm. Inside, however, is one of the most closely guarded financial engines in America. Ensign Peak is the investment arm of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, a portfolio so carefully veiled that for decades, even many faithful members knew almost nothing about it. Leaked documents and rare disclosures have peeled back only fragments of the curtain. They reveal holdings that stretch across the economic landscape. Stakes in Silicon Valley tech giants, acres of prime Midwestern farmland, luxury shopping malls and urban office towers, and quiet positions in blue-chip companies whose names light up the Dow Jones. Independent analysts now estimate the total value at $300 billion or more, a figure on par with the largest hedge funds and larger than the annual GDP of nations like Finland or Chile. Unlike corporations, the church pays no federal income tax on its tithes, and unlike public charities, it discloses almost nothing of its balance sheets or investment strategy. Decisions rest in the hands of a small circle of senior leaders who answer only to the church's own hierarchy. To believers, this is prudent stewardship, a sacred reserve for global humanitarian work and the needs of future generations. To critics, it is an untouchable hoard, a spiritual empire operating with the secrecy of a private bank. Whatever the perspective, the reality is unmistakable. A faith that began with frontier poverty now commands a financial powerhouse that moves through global markets with the quiet confidence of a sovereign wealth fund. For millions of faithful Latter-day Saints, the vast fortune is not a scandal, it is stewardship. They see a treasury built not for luxury, but for divine preparation, a reserve to fund global charity, to rush aid to disasters, to build temples and send missionaries when the final days draw near. In Sunday lessons and private prayers, many interpret the wealth as evidence of providence, proof that God blesses a disciplined people who give, obey, and trust their leaders. But outside that circle of faith, a different story is whispered. Economists marvel at a religious organization whose holdings rival those of national banks, while revealing almost nothing of its books. Journalists probe, only to find sealed ledgers and a governance structure accountable to no electorate, no shareholders, and no public audit. Critics call it unchecked power, a spiritual movement that began in frontier poverty, now controlling skyscrapers, farmland, data centers, and stock portfolios that can sway markets. Even seasoned financiers admit that the true scope of the church's wealth is hard to chart. From Wall Street to Vatican City, watchers are only beginning to grasp that this is not merely a church with investments, it is a global financial force with the discipline of a faith and the reach of a sovereign fund. And yet the mystery remains. Is this fortune a shield for the world's hardest days, a monument to meticulous faith, or simply a mirror of human ambition shaped in the language of Scripture? The question isn't merely how the Latter-day Saints built this fortune. It's what they intend to do with it in a century where faith and finance keep colliding. This is The Chronist, your guide through the hidden corridors of history and prophecy. If revelations like these make you think twice about power, subscribe now, tap the bell, and stay with us as we uncover the next great secret waiting in plain sight.